Whoa. Whoa. Ooh. One of the craziest things that I learned while researching descending is that traction is everything. Like, seriously, everything. All descending skills are about maximizing or maintaining traction. So every adjustment in body position, braking, line choice, speeds is at its core an effort to optimize the grip of the tires on the road. And if I'm going to beat my personal best on my 5-kilometer downhill course, I will need all the traction I can get. But there's a problem. How do I know where the limit of my grip is? I mean, there's the obvious going down, sliding out, biting the dust when you lose grip. How about a safer way? This is where we turn to science. Now, performance in downhill road cycling is understudied, but there are some interesting papers on bike handling because they borrow the most valuable tools used in motorsports. And it blows my mind that more people are not talking about these studies because they are genius. Oh, just quickly, if you don't know, this is part 2 of a 3-part series on descending where I am aiming to beat my best time on a 5-kilometer descent by increasing my cornering speed safely, and I am bringing you along for the ride. One study used mathematical modeling to find that a virtual rider had a 10% improvement if they could get a 13-second gain on a 5-kilometer descent. So this is why I'm aiming for a 13-second saving on my course, and I'll use multiples of 13 seconds to measure my improvements. Back to our problem. How do we know where the limit of our grip is? Well, we can get this information by using 2 tools repurposed from motorsports. They've been used in a couple of studies and they do transition really well into cycling. Like, check this out. This is my skill level. And once you get the hang of this chart, it's clear at a glance there's room for my improvement. Everyone has a friction circle of their own, properly called a GG diagram or a GG plot because it plots G-force longitudinally, acceleration and braking, and G-force laterally, cornering left and cornering right. Even the best sprinters struggle to reach a little over 1G, 1.026G when sprinting, 0.4G on the brakes, and around 1G sideways. So this sets our limits of our bike's ability. Some pro riders will be able to get closer to the edge of traction some of the time, which is fastest. New riders, well, it's safer that they avoid the edge of traction, which they would do anyway and might look like this. Brave but somewhat clueless riders can push the limits of cornering without increasing acceleration or braking. This is me, so I get this slightly larger ellipse. Fitter and more skilled riders are cross-shaped, pushing closer to the limits on corners and brakes and also accelerating harder out of corners. But they're using the less advanced mantra of one form of acceleration at a time, or slow in, fast out. But holding the edge of the traction in transition by braking and cornering at the same time, resulting in a shape that looks like butterfly wings or a big pair of earlobes, that's what separates a hero from a legend. Sometimes riders push the limits by accident. Take Tom Pidcock's move around the outside of this rider. You can see the little bump that takes him right to the outer edge of the diagram. Super sketchy. It pushes him right to the traction circle, marking the limits of the bike's grip. And I am in no way advocating that you go out and find the real edge of your bikes and your capability. But to get faster, how am I going to widen the hole in my GG plot safely? Well, the answer doesn't come in the form of low percentage moves like Pidcock's, and this includes his world-class snap to get out of corners quickly. Nope, for me and you, it's going to be about mastering from the turn-in point to the exit. Starting with trail braking. Cloaked in mystery and hesitation, it's the black sheep of cycling techniques, as it's really something to learn after you've mastered traditional braking practices. But we all know how to hit the brakes before the corner, so just trail off while adding a little cornering force. Technically, This is the difference between coming off the brakes at the turn-in point versus trail braking from the turn-in point to the apex, where your rear brake is your traction dial, because on a road, motorbike trail braking is done exclusively with the front brake, but on a bicycle, it's your rear brake. And that's all trail braking is, and it's how we build out our ggplot. The question is, how does one do this safely? So knowing that braking in a straight line is best for panic braking or when you don't have a good feel for braking is important to know. So if you're ever unsure, keep it safe and do your braking early. Don't use the brakes through the turn. You'll have more traction and more margin to handle unexpected hazards. But if you want to try trail braking, the first thing to understand is that it's a game of lever feel. And this, my friend, is where I'll spark up the rim versus disc brake debate. See, lever feel is all about modulation. Brake modulation is simply controlling how much force you put into the brake rotor or rim with a certain amount of lever pressure. In other words, it allows you to adjust your speed as much or as little as you want without losing traction, unless of course that's what you want. You need a brake that's controllable at the edge of lockup. Excellent brake modulation is predictable, but if input doesn't match output, trust in the brakes is compromised. Brake caliber flexibility, excess cable friction, poorly bled hydraulic lines, soft brake pad materials, or poor brake lever design can cause inconsistent force at the caliper. Look at these examples of modulation. Low modulation, the brakes are too stiff and lever position provides little feedback. Too much modulation, brakes flex too much and the lever bottoms out, resulting in weak braking. Ideal modulation, where brakes provide feedback in the lever position and brake power is fully utilized. This is why discs and hydraulics are better at matching brake subtraction with lean addition, helping you perfect the GG trail brake. Once you're at the apex with brakes released, you still need to reach the exit point. This section of the corner, and this is the point of the ggplot where you can still reach peak cornering G. By peak, I'm not referring to maximum traction, but rather expanding your plot slightly. Achieving this is simple. Just continue leaning. Well, not quite, as you're centimeters away from disaster at this point, which you can see if you look at these lean angles. 42 degrees is scientifically validated on the bike, and it looks something like this. I've always believed that I've never gotten close to any dangerous lean angles. And this includes factoring in how this limit changes based on surface and road braking. Meaning, on a flat road, 42 degrees is possible if there's no oil, water, potholes, slippery spots, or loose dirt. But lean technique also plays a part and is one of the most confusing parts of descending that I've come across. We see different styles of leaning on two-wheeled machines, but what is best for cycling? Here's skills coach Dylan Cooper to help us.
Body and bike, without a doubt, should always be leaning in. Both should be leaning towards where you want to go. And I think why there's a controversy or a debate about whether the bike shouldn't do that is that people adopt what elite or expert riders do, which is get on the inside of the bike. The misconception is that you get your average punter who is going slow. They try to lean in on the inside of the bike, almost like a MotoGP rider, and it's a horrible feeling because they're, one, not going fast enough to be stable. They probably feel like they're going to fall in, and two, it creates oversteer with the bars because it just pulls the bars in when you don't want them to, and that creates oversteer and break of traction on the front. Whereas if this is done correctly, which is high speed entry, not over braking, obviously MotoGP riders are going like 300k an hour plus into maybe 3 corners. You know, road cyclists aren't doing that speed, but I think there is a minimum speed. I think it's about 50k an hour. That technique feels good because you don't feel like you're going to fall in.
Let's quickly go over why you feel like you're going to fall in. Gravity pushes our tires down, and the ground pushes it back up against this gravity, and this is called normal force. When you turn in a corner, you get centrifugal force pushing outward, but a friction patch pushes back inward. Friction and ground forces happen where the tire meets the road, the contact patch. Gravity and centrifugal forces operate on the center of mass, which sits up higher, closer to the rider. In a corner, if you fail to lean, then your gravity and your ground forces cancel each other, meaning the centrifugal and friction work together to flip you off your bike. And that's why you want to lean, to get your center of gravity and normal forces off axis so the bike wants to fall down as much as it wants to fall up. Oh, and how about that MotoGP knee that we often see? Some riders believe that sticking out the knee improves cornering, and this is a useless, albeit reassuring gesture that can even degrade control on uneven roads. Any body weight that is not centered over the bike puts a side load on the bike, which can cause steering motions on uneven roads. Plus, it creates wind resistance and can slow you down. So leaning is essential, but the best way to learn how to lean seems to be not to think about it, meaning it's a meaningless thing to think about. Leaning is a byproduct of better technique. The technique is how you lean, and that is what you should be thinking about. Focusing on the fundamentals of a corner will place your body in the best position to take high-speed corners automatically. These fundamentals, which will be covered in more detail in the next video, include these. Once you've mastered these, you will naturally be leaning towards where you want to go without oversteering. So as long as you're maintaining this position from the turn-in point, you can continue like this to the exit point, as ideally maximum lean angle has already occurred before the apex. In my first run down the course, you can see I really wasn't pushing it too hard, 41 degrees being my max, but man, only for a brief second, and it's probably an error in the data. So I am pretty conservative. So let's take a look at a rider that's far more of a risk taker and an aggressive pedaler than pure descender. Tom Pidcock. There's an old quote in cycling: you can't win a bike race on the downhill, but you can definitely lose it. But I guess the first person that said that had never met Tom Pidcock or Chris Froome, Peter Sagan. Anyway, we can see in real numbers how close to the limits he rides by looking at his lean angle on that stage 12 of the 2022 Tour de France. You can see hitting 40 degrees, and with some banking, he hits 48 degrees. Madness. But if we take this even further and plot this entire descent, we can see his pattern and how much of the traction circle he used. Now, take this data with a grain of salt, as we can't confirm its accuracy. The course is different, etc., etc., but it can help us see some trends. Like, I can see he is accelerating in corners a lot more than any specific braking control or aggressive pure cornering. He does, as we can see here, push the limits of braking Gs, where 0.4 is really the limit, but he hits 0.45, and it's either a data error or he really is pushing the limits. And with that, we have expanded our GG plot and have the tools to ride faster than ever before. But I hate to break it to you, even if you master the GG chart and you learn how to trail brake, the truth is you may not be optimizing everything you need to descend faster. And like using these tools, it's more than just saying stay relaxed. There is a better way. To learn what this is, watch this video here, because when done right, it will build your descending style and confidence from the ground up and really get you descending faster and safer than ever before.